Okay, good morning class. So today we are going to talk about endocrine system. So endocrine system is a regulating system. It composed of glands, no? Mga glands ni sila ang naa sa endocrine. And primarily, they produce uh, hormones, no? Hormones which is needed by the body. Wait a minute first. Let me check, no? Okay. Hormones that is needed by the body to regulate each function. Okay. Nervous and endocrine system coordinate. No? So they coordinate in regulating the body functions. Um, when the imbalance of functions, let's take for in the body occur. Let's take for example, if you have increase in blood pressure, primarily the nervous system is the first one to respond, or to respond rather, in lowering the blood pressure by doing uh, maybe by decreasing the heart rate using the autonomic nervous system. No? So, ipa-decrease niya using your parasympathetic fiber. Ipa-decrease niya imong heart rate so that once the heart rate decreases, the pressure in the area also decreases. Or it will utilize the again, parasympathetic, stimulating the smooth muscles in your blood vessel to dilate or to relax in order for the blood vessel to dilate. Since mo-increase na ang diameter sa blood vessel, then your blood pressure will also decrease or will drop. Okay? So, but these regulating functions only occur for a short period, a short time lang. Maybe it is only good for a matter of minutes, hours, or sometimes a day. After that, your nervous system would be overwhelmed with this kind of task. No? Because there are other functions that need also to be, or other autonomic functions that needs to be responded on. So, ang gagawin ng body, it will utilize now your endocrine system. So, paano? Maybe magsisecrete, i-stimulate niya ang adrenal glands to secrete uh, vasopressin hormone, or pag mataas yung vasopressin, i-decrease niya ang amount para at saka i-increase yung antidiuretic or i-decrease yung antidiuretic hormone, or we call it ADH, no? Para ma-regulate yung blood pressure. Or it which secretes other hormones such as uh, your norepinephrine, no? Para ma-stimulate yung or ma-inhibit yung heart activity. So depende kung ano yung gagamitin ng ating nagtinagalog na po si Sir. Depende kung unsay gusto sa ato ang endocrine system nga gamiton para ma-isolate ang inhang response. Because when we use the autonomic nervous system, usually the response is more on generalized. It will not affect only the one organ, the heart. It will affect the other heart, no? So if ma-utilize niya yung thoracolumbar, all the organs that belongs to the thoracolumbar nervous system, no, maging tatamaan siya. Or pag ginamit niya man yung craniosacral, yung sa sympathetic, ganun pa rin, no? So, whereas kung gagamitin niya yung hormones, magiging specific siya that the hormones will respond only to or will stimulate or inhibit only the activity of the organ which secretes that specific hormone. So, it is more specific siya pagdating sa endocrine. While ang nervous system natin, more generalized response siya. Halimbawa, pag natatakot ka, ano yung response mo? Tataas yung heartbeat. Pag tumaas yung heartbeat, ano pa ba? Pinapawisan ka, lalo na sa liig, sa kamay, sa kilikili. Hindi mo siya makokontrol, no? Those responses also happens if you have increase in BP or decrease in BP pag nagre-regulate. Or minsan, magkakaroon ka pa ng dizziness, no? Masyadong mataas yung pressure sa utak. Kaya, or sometimes sa ears, no? You will hear tinnitus. So, yung respond ng body is medyo talagang gross siya. Whereas ang endocrine, it is more specific. No? Pag sinabing dito lang siya yung tatamaan niya, blood vessel lang yung ipadadilate niya. Your heart remains normal, yung activity niya. Okay, now let's go to the but basically the one that monitors the functions of the endocrine system still your nervous system. So siya pa rin yung nag-oversees nun. No? Kaso lang, iba yung ginagamit niya. No? Pag nagdito ka sa specific siya na nervous lang talaga, autonomic yung unilateralize. No? That is for only short term. So usually in abrupt situation or mga unexpected situation, yan yung ginagamit ng body natin. Pero pag palaging ganyan, mag-shift na siya dun sa endocrine. So hormones are simply mediator molecules that have effects on cells in the local environment or in the distant part of the body. So some hormones are called autocrine. When you say autocrine is these hormones is locally produced or secrete that bind on the same cell. So halimbawa, sa autocrine is pancreas, no? Yung pancreas, ano ba yung sinisecretes niya? No, not pancreas. It's different pala. Pituitary, no? Pituitary gland. Okay, so mayroon siya mga hormones diyan na pag sinicretes niya, siya mismo ang na-stimulate para mag-produce ng another hormone. No? Na siya secretory and inhibitory no hormones na tinatawag. So what are the types of hormones? So you have another one, paracrine hormones. These are local hormones that are secreted into interstitial fluid and act on nervine cells. So that is your paracrine. So an example of paracrine hormone, you have your renin and angiotensin hormone. So renin and angiotensin, no, renin and angiotensin, pinaproduce yan ng lung tissue. Okay. So, saan ba yung renin angiotensin? Saan siya ginagamit? So, usually, it affects your blood-producing bones, your flat bones, no? Okay? So, siya yung nag-stimulate ng hormones mo, ng red bone marrow mo na magpo-produce ka ng red blood cells. No? Dahil may shortage ka ng oxygen na nade-detect ng aortic bodies, no? Doon sa aorta ng heart. Then you have your endocrine hormones. Hormones are secreted into interstitial fluid and then absorbed into the bloodstream to be carried systemically to any cell that displays appropriate type of receptor. So these are endocrine hormones. So pinoproduce yan ng glands, tapos dinadala siya sa dugo, then it will be mag-a-adapt lang siya or magbabind lang siya dun sa part ng body natin kung saan mayroon siyang presence ng receptor which is appropriate for that hormones. So let's take for example, your pituitary gland produce luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone stimulates your uh, dun sa ovary ng babae, no? Uh, let's take for example of ADHD, uh, adenocorticotropic hormone, no? ACTH, no? Adenocorticotropic. So, sinisecrete siya ng pituitary gland mo, tapos doon siya magre-react sa kidney. So, specifically sa adrenal cortex, no? Para mag-secrete ka ng sa kidney, doon sa may adrenal glands, doon sa taas ng kidney. Okay? So, that's an example on endocrine hormones. Then, may dalawang klase ang hormones. You have your lipid-soluble and water-soluble hormones. So, usually lipid-soluble hormones, nagbabind siya. Ito yung mga hormones na nagbabind siya dun sa receptors ng cytoplasm or nucleus of the cell. So, ibig sabihin, pumapasok siya sa loob ng cell in order for that hormone to create change. While water-soluble only binds to the surface. Hindi siya pumapasok sa loob ng cells. Doon lang siya sa surface ng cell or doon siya mismo sa may cell membrane lang. Doon lang siya nagbabind tapos doon siya magka-create ng change sa loob ng cell. Whereas yung lipid-soluble, pumapasok siya talaga. Okay? Sa cytoplasm or sa nucleus ng cell, doon siya magbabind. So, if sa cytoplasm, usually, dito siya nagbabind sa, not rough, on smooth endoplasmic reticulum, no? Doon sa organelles na yon. Kasi, nandun yung, pinaproduce yun yung mga lipids, no? Na substances. So, yung mga lipid-soluble hormones consist of steroid hormones. Ano ba yung mga steroid hormones? So, these are example of these mga steroid hormones is your androgens, no? Mga male hormones, these are steroids. Or yung pinoproduce mismo ng adrenal medulla. I think it's the adrenal medulla that produce this hormone. No? Glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids. So these are steroids hormones. And you have also thyroid hormones, no? Your T1, T3, and T4. T1 is your thyroxine, T3 is your triiodothyronine, and T4, I forgot the name, no? Anyway, we will discuss that later. So you had your thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, that are synthesized by attaching to iodine to the amino acid tyrosine. Then you have your gas, nitric acid, both a hormone and a neurotransmitter, usually into nitric oxide, no, not acid. In O2, this is used by the body to dilate blood vessels. Specifically, pinaproduce siya ng tissue dun sa penis ng lalaki. No? So, it is more abundant there para it makes the penis erect. No? Sinisecrete siya pag na-stimulate yung penis ng lalaki. So, usually autonomic, no? Siyempre, pag nag-isip ka ng mga bagay na if you think things na would arouse your sexual or your sensuality, then mag-e-erect yung penis mo dahil sinisecrete tong substance na to, nitric oxide. So, in order for a lipid to move in the cell, it requires a carrier protein, no? Yung lipid-soluble hormones. Kailangan siya ng carrier hormone na protein para ma-transport siya doon papasok sa watery environment. Remember, lipid soluble yan. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya natutunaw sa water. So, hydrophobic siya. No? Takot siya sa tubig. So, para lang makapasya, kailangan siya ng carrier protein para makapasok. Para din siyang, it's like similar to sugar, no, that requires carrier protein, no? Your glucose, it requires carrier protein in order for it to be utilized by the cells, no? Yan yung tinatawag na insulin. No? So a hormone could become a carrier protein also. So yan yung insulin, ang function ng insulin. Pag na kumain ka, if you are eating a lot of starchy food and once this food is converted into simple sugar or we call it glucose, so in order for the cells to utilize this to, to utilize these hormones to these substances rather, so kasi ito yung ginagamit na fuel ng ating body, lalo na at cellular level, it is converted to ATP during Krebs cycle, electron chain transport, and glycolysis, no? So para makapasok doon siya sa cell, para makabind siya sa mitochondria kung saan siya pinoproduce yung ATP, kailangan siya ng carrier protein which is insulin. Pag hindi siya nakapasok doon sa cell, ang mangyayari, tataas yung blood concentration ng sugar mo. So yan yung tinatawag nating diabetes or hyper or no, that's ano ba yan? Nakalimutan ko ng term, no? It's anyway, maalala ko lang yan mamaya. So these are the lipid-soluble hormone actions. So you see, from the blood, it goes out, it diffuses out yung hormone mo, lalabas siya. Tapos pagdating niya dun sa cell membrane, papasok siya. Pag nagpasok siya, para makapasok doon siya, kailangan siya ng carrier protein. Ano ba yung carrier protein? Nandun siya sa loob. Okay. So, ngayon, papasok siya, saka na siya, pag nakadala na siya ng carrier protein, papuntang nucleus, saka na siya mag-create ng change. Doon mismo sa loob ng nucleus. Okay, so it might be gagamitin yung lipids sa DNA synthesis or yung tinatawag nating duplications or maybe replications. So kasi may dalawang process yung synthesis ng DNA. You have there the replications and duplications. Okay. Mitosis, no? Sa mitosis natin. So it might be a segment only of the DNA strand is needed to be converted, or it might be the whole, no? So then you have your water-soluble hormones. Water-soluble hormones, you have your peptide, protein hormones, or amino acids. These are water-soluble. Okay. So there are two major types, no, of water-soluble. You have your eicosanoids and prostaglandins and leukotrienes. Okay. This is very active during inflammatory response or during infection. Then, so ginagamit natin na may receptor siya doon sa cell. So ibig sabihin, nandito siya sa cell membrane or sa surface ng cell yung binding site niya. So pag present siya, pag nag-bind siya doon, halimbawa ganito, Pag nag-bind siya, then on the other end of that receptor cells or receptor protein, usually it is a glycoprotein, mayroon nandun yung mag-create siya ng changes. May tinatawag tayong messenger, no? Doon mismo sa puwetan ng receptor na yon. Yung messenger na yon, yan yung magke-carry ng, that will be the one carrying the messages that is intended for specific part ng cells to be activated, no? Or to become active. So, ayan siya, no? So, prostaglandins and leukotrienes are echinocytes hormones with local control. So, ano ba yung functions nito, prostaglandins? Usually, it mediates pain. When you say mediates, means it promotes. When this substance is present in the area, masakit yung lugar na yan. Namumula, umiinit, no? You have presence of inflammations. So you have your rubor, calor, and redness. So yung triad ng inflammation nandyan. So you have your pain, no? Pain, redness, swelling, okay? Present yan, no? Pag nandyan si prostaglandin. And increase in temperature, mainit. Okay, so you have there platelet aggregations, fever, and inflammation. So those are fun. So, okay. But of course, in our stomach, they stimulate the smooth muscle activity of your stomach. But in your soft tissue, ito yung nangyayari. Ito siya. So, hindi lang siya prostaglandin. Mayroon pang iba. You have substance P together with leukotrienes, no? These are pain-mediating substances in the soft tissue. So, endocrine hormones control a variety of physiological process. So, usually, ito yung rene-regulate ng uh, endocrine hormones natin. So, pag tinignan mo, if you are going to read this carefully, these processes are long-term processes. Let's take, for example, growth. Pangmatagalan yan kasi you have sport growth, especially in adolescent, from 11, averaging, no? Ga-average na siya from 11 to 21. Yan yung sport growth ng individual. So, it's a long-term process. Hindi naman siya overnight na when you sleep 7 o'clock in the evening, then you wake up in the morning, you are already 5'11". Hindi. It would take time for you to reach that height. So, it's a long process. And let's take, for example, energy production. So, it is being regulated, no? Pag nagme-metabolize ka if you are metabolizing simple sugar, it would take time. Pag kumain ka ng carbohydrates, and sometimes it is cyclical because you eat 3 times a day. So 3 times a day, your sugar will be regulated. So it is cyclical process. And pangmatagalan. So these are physiology already, sa hormones. So I don't need to discuss that one. So what are the organs that secretes endocrine hormones? So you have your glands. Ano ba yung mga glands? You have your endocrine glands. Okay? So you have your exocrine and endocrine. So basically, pag sinabi mong, when you say exocrine glands, these glands is secretes its secretion uh, into ducts. Okay? When you say ducts, mayroon siyang parang tube na dinadaanan. But when you say endocrine hormones, these hormones are secreted directly to the blood. No? Diretso siya sa dugo. Okay, ito yon. So, direkta siya dun sa dugo. So, in order for the endocrine system to regulate body functions, it uses this process, negative and positive feedback. But negative feedback is the most common, no? Na ginagamit na ni-use ng body natin to regulate the body functions. Okay? So we seldom use positive feedback, only in special occasions. Okay? Yeah. So when you say negative feedback, pag sinabi mong negative feedback, it goes against the functions. Okay. Let's take for example, or it goes against the the functions that your body is doing. No? Let's take for example heart rate. Your heart rate is increasing. So your endocrine system will try to decrease it. Okay. Kasi tumataas siya. Tinatawag natin siyang negative feedback in order to return to its normal functions. Let's take for example, if you're breathing, or no, not breathing. If your blood sugar is increasing, so what will your body do? Especially your endocrine system will try to counteract that. So if your blood sugar level in your blood is increasing, your body will secrete more insulin hormone coming from your uh, pancreatic cells, no? So that this excess glucose in your blood will be ushered to your usually muscular cells, no, to be born para masunog siya. O, dadalhin siya dun sa loob ng muscular cells mo. Or sometimes it will be stored in your fat cells, no? I-convert siya into fats. Okay? So, opposite. But in positive feedback, usually, ginagamit lang to in special occasions. It cannot be used by the body regularly because it will result to fatal reactions. When you say fatal reactions, maging sanhi ng kamatayan ng pasyente mo or ng isang tao. Kasi when you say positive feedback, whatever reactions is your body producing towards a certain stimulus, i-magnify siya ng endocrine hormone. Okay, let's take for example, if you are, usually common siya sa mga pregnant women na ginagamit. Okay, so in pregnant women, you'll have their production of increased production of oxytocin hormone. Now, oxytocin hormone not only affects the joints of your pelvis, but as well as other joints of the body. It will become lax. But at the same time, oxytocin hormone also stimulates your uterine wall to contract. So usually in a certain level, especially in the third trimester, the oxytocin hormone becomes what? Beyond normal level na yung amount niya. So what will happen now? It will trigger now your myometrium or your muscular layer of your uterus for women to contract to expel the baby which is found inside the uterus. Now, and that contraction will produce pain sensation. Parang nabibiyak ang babae, no? Murag kuan pa, murag ibo. murag giatsa ang iyahang puson, no, sa kasakit. Di masabtan sa babae ang kasakit. Sobra pa sa dysmenorrhea. Kung naay dysmenorrhea, since we have babae diri niya, kung mag-menstruate mo, sobra pa anak kasakit ang mga anak. That is according to my wife. So sobra pa anak, murag ka kunong giatsa ang imuhang puson sa kasakit. So instead of, kasi nagko-contract siya ng malakas yung uterus, instead of producing a hormone that will counteract the reaction of oxytocin, your body will further increase the production of oxytocin so that the content of the uterus will be expelled out. Eventually, when it is out, that's the time only that you could feel relief of pain. Okay? So, that is positive feedback. So, instead siya na i-counteract sana, hindi patataasin pa rin niya yung oxytocin hormone. So, that is very dangerous when it happens to your, let's take for example, if you have cut. So, if you have cut, usually, your body will react negatively. Ano ba yung ipoproduce siya? Magpapalabas siya ngayon ng maraming platelet. No? You have cascade of hemostasis or stoppage of blood flow. No? Mayroon kang platelet secretion, no, para magpa-plug doon sa blood vessel. So imagine if it is a positive feedback, what will your body do? Instead of producing this platelet that counteract with the reaction of your body in which the blood is oozing out, it will further dilate the blood vessel, and which makes your platelet unable to plug, no, the area, no, kung saan naputol yung blood vessel mo. So what will happen? You will die of hemorrhaging. No? So yan yung example ng negative feedback. Ito yung sample na ginagamit nila is calcium level in the blood. No? Then you have your, ito siya ang negative feedback, no, in secreting calcitonin hormone. So usually this is in production of calcium. So, kailan ba siya needed yung calcium ng katawan natin? So usually in osteoblast and osteoclast activity in remodeling of the bone. Okay? So here, if you have low level of calcium in the blood, your parathyroid hormone will what? Na pinoproduce siya ng mag-produce siya ng parathormone, no? PTH. Okay. So usually with this one, saan mo siya nagwi-withdraw? It withdraws from, it takes calcium from your diet or yung kinakain or iniinom mo para ma-stimulate yung osteoblast and osteoclast activity. Okay, usually in osteoblast, no? So, ina-absorb yung calcium para i-deposit dun sa buto kasi ginagamit siya for new bone formations. Okay. Or sometimes, if kailangan siya, usually if you have an acidic diet, no, your diet is usually more on meat, and you consume a lot of beverages, C2, Coke, no, these are acidic, no, nga mga substances, and your body needs to buffer these substances to make them base. Nangyayari, mag-withdraw siya ngayon ng calcium dun sa buto natin. So, what will happen? You will have now increased osteoclast activity to resorb bone tissue so that calcium concentration will increase in your bloodstream to buffer the presence of these acidic substances. So ngayon, ibig sabihin, if you consume a lot of soda, even if you are male, pwede kang magkakaroon ng osteoporosis dahil dyan. Because when you consume this food or these beverages, it triggers the osteoclast activity of the bone, and it will resolve your calcium from the bone. Then it will be released to your bloodstream to buffer the substances which is absorbed by your blood vessel from your small intestine. Okay, so this is like an example of positive feedback. So it's about oxytocin. I think I mentioned that already. So what are the endocrine system? No? Or what are the organs that belongs to the endocrine system? So these are glands. So what are these glands? You have your master gland, which is pituitary, parathyroid, adrenal, and pineal. Now, pituitary gland, together with your pineal glands, it sits on your uh, cerebral, no, in your cerebrum. Nandun siya, or it is located in your cerebrum. Your pituitary gland is in your base of cerebrum. Here, this is the pituitary gland. It sits there in your sella turcica. It rides there, no? May upuan talaga siya diyan. It is highly protected. Now, in some book, they consider the hypothalamus, thymus, and pancreas, ovaries, and testes are considered as uh, an endocrine part of the endocrine glands because they have tissues that produces hormones. Okay? Mayroon silang tissue na pinoproduce na hormones. Now, if you notice in some of the anatomy book, the pancreas is also named as islet of Langerhans. Yeah? Yan yung isang name niya. So, usually when do we use pancreas and islet of Langerhans? Okay. Now, we use the word pancreas if you are referring to the pancreas as part of digestive system. Yan yung name niya. But if you are referring the pancreas as part of the endocrine system, then you use the term islet of Langerhans. Yan. In hypothalamus, mayroon siya. It has two parts. The neurohypophysis, no? And forgot the other name. No? Neurohypophysis, usually it reacts to the activity of the nervous system, and the other one reacts to the activity of the endocrine system. This part produces what we call inhibitory and excitatory hormones that stimulates your pituitary gland. Then you have your thymus. The thymus only becomes active usually on the earlier stage or later year of life sa individual. Earlier stage rather. From birth to up to the age of 7, then it will eventually mawawala siya. No? Then you have your ovaries, okay, which produces hormones and testes, but of course it has other functions. Aside producing hormones, it produces other reproduction. Basically, egg, it produces egg, which is responsible for reproduction. So there are other organs in the body that contains also endocrine-like cells that produces hormone. Example, heart, no? Your heart, it produces ANP or atrial natriuretic peptide. It is a hormone, no, that reacts to the blood vessel. Skin, intestine, liver, and stomach, and placenta. So they have endocrine-like cells that produces hormones. So these are the locations of your endocrine glands. Okay, so you have your pituitary, which sits on the sella turcica, the hypothalamus, and the pineal gland. Okay, the pineal gland is located on the posterior part of your diencephalon. Malapit siya sa epithalamus. Now, pineal gland, um, nagpo-produce siya ng melatonin hormone. Sometimes we usually ma-mistake na to mention ang melatonin sa melanin. No? Melatonin is different from melanin hormone. Melatonin regulates our sleep and wake cycle. Okay? It reacts to the presence of light. No? So usually, if we have, no, if your rooms are well lighted, then your melatonin hormones is inhibited. No? Nai-inhibit siya. So, mangyayari dahil wala siya, sa mababa yung concentration niya sa bloodstream natin, then we'll stay awake. But if it is high, then matitrigger yung aantukin tayo, or you will feel sleepy or drowsy. Okay? So that's why in the evening, if you are looking at your cell phone screen, which is usually we have the blue light there, which stimulates your, or inhibits rather, the activity of your pineal gland. So what will happen? Will not feel sleepy. If you're looking at the screen of your cell phone, browsing the Facebook, the one, then that blue light that is emitted by the screen of your cell phone, not only cell phone, that includes laptop, other devices, no, na made up of lead, LCD, it emits blue light. That blue light inhibits activity of your pineal gland, and it inhibits the release of melatonin hormone in your bloodstream that will not promote sleep. So, hindi ka aantukin, hindi ka makatulog. So, that's why it's very important, if you want to sleep early, as much as possible, you will stop watching TV around 30 minutes before the time you will sleep. Supposing, halimbawa, gusto mong matulog at 10 o'clock in the evening, so by 9:30, you off the light, you are already there in the bed, lying down, no? Dark na yung paligid. Then you have your pituitary, then you have your thyroid and parathyroid. So, ibig sabihin, when you say parathyroid, is nagilid siya ng thyroid gland mo. Then you have your thymus here, which is located on the posterior of your sternum. Nandyan yung thymus gland. Okay? Then your heart, your adrenal glands is located at the top of your kidney. Then your pancreas is located dun sa small intestine, in your duodenal part. Nandyan siya. Actually, para siyang catfish, or sa Bisaya pa, pantat, no? Ang appearance ng pancreas. Okay? Naka-attach siya diyan sa duodenum, or the first part of the small intestine. Then for women, they have the ovary on the left hand side. It is in the iliac region. No? Then sa lalaki, of course, the testis, no? Nandiyan siya sa in-between ng dalawang thigh. So the hypothalamus is a major link between nervous and endocrine system. Okay, so mayroon siyang RAS na tinatawag, or reticular activating system, no? Na nag-activate. So the hypothalamus mainly controls the pituitary gland, which is called hypophysis. So it hangs down on the, okay, ito na siya pala, the adenohypophysis. Okay? So your hypothalamus has this, no? It connected to adenohypophysis of the pituitary gland and neurohypophysis of your pituitary gland. which is the posterior pituitary gland, and the adenohypophysis is your anterior. Okay. Now, the anterior pituitary gland produces about 70%, no? Marami siyang glands na pero 75% of the glands ng pituitary pinoproduce ng anterior. Kukunti lang yung sa posterior. Kaya malaki siya, no? 75% of the total weight of the gland. So, anterior pituitary or adenohypophysis is anatomically and functionally connected to the hypothalamus by blood vessels that form a portal system called hypophyseal portal system. Ito yung connection nila, connected through blood vessel. While your neurohypophysis actually class is connected siya by means of tracts. Okay, neuro man siya. So, nakakonect niya dili blood vessel. It is a fiber of the nerve. So, that stimulates your posterior pituitary gland. So, dili siya bloodstream. So, here, the first, whatever kinahanglan siya magkuhan, kinahanglan siya sa anterior pituitary, kung kinahanglan siya mo functions, kinahanglan mag-release of hormones ang imuhang hypothalamus to react with your anterior pituitary. Whereas, if posterior pituitary ang kinahanglan niya stimulate, ang gamiton lang sa imong hypothalamus is an electrical signal. No? Stimulate niya lang niya through electrical signal. Mag-release na din of hormone ang posterior pituitary gland. So there are five types of anterior pituitary cells that secrete 7 hormones. Okay. This type of cells produce different hormones. No? You have your somatotrope cells, thyrotrope, gonadotrope, lactotrope, corticotrope. Okay, so usually their hormones that is produced correspond to their name. Somatotrope produces somatotropin, thyrotrope produces thyroid stimulating hormone or TSH, gonadotropin hormone that stimulates your gonads, no? Your ovary and your testis. Lactotrope stimulates the breast as well as the uterus, no? Then corticotrope, it stimulates the kidney. Corticotropin, no? Adrenocorticotropic hormone, dito siya pinaproduce. Lactotrope, you have your for lactating. Ano ba yung hormones for lactating? Prolactin. No? So, yan, no? So, these are the hormones that is released by your hypothalamus to stimulate your anterior pituitary gland. So, these are your releasing hormone and inhibitory. No? Mayroon siyang inhibitory hormone. So, first you have your GHRH. These are releasing hormone. Stimulates your anterior pituitary gland to produce human growth hormone. Then your thyrotropin releasing or TRH to produce pituitary gland mo ng TSH, TRH, no? Para ma-produce yan ng prolactin. GnRH, gonadotropic releasing hormone to produce FSH. This is follicle stimulating. So para mag-produce yan ng egg, no? Oocytes, follicle. Pag sa lalaki, yung testis to produce sperm. Gonadotropic releasing hormone to produce luteinizing hormone. So usually it reacts to your ovaries to produce the egg at the same time to stimulate the uterus para mag-thicken siya. So usually sa testis, ito yung para lumabas yung testosterone para to trigger your secondary sex characteristic for male. So ayan, no? Ito yung mga hormones class. Anyway, madali naman yung may memorize. No? Ito yung anterior pituitary So adrenocorticotropic, melanocyte stimulating hormone. This is for the skin. No? So of course, when you have imbalance of this hormone, that would results to abnormality. Let's take for example, if you have decrease in growth hormone, what will happen? You will have dwarfism. Basically, we call it as pituitary dwarfism because it is caused by hormonal imbalance, secondary to hypoactivity of the anterior pituitary gland. And you have also, if it is hypersecreted, that would result to giantism. Masyadong nasobrahan. Okay, that is good if it is at a young stage, no? Ibig sabihin, pag bata pa siya tapos hypersecreted, of course your growth will be balanced. Ibig sabihin, it means that the length of your leg and your limbs are equal, also proportionate with the length with the other parts of your body. However, if this hypersecretion occurs already when you're already in adulthood, no? Adult na ka, enclosed na yung growth plate ng bones mo, what will happen? You'll have imbalance of growth of certain types of parts of the body compared with the other. Basically, the most commonly affected parts is the digits and the face. So, magiging disproportionate yung face mo, no? Mataas yung face, usually the facial bone, and the mandible becomes longer, and your digits also, no? Ito, tataas yung mga digits. So, the rest of the parts of the body are normal. We call this as acromegaly. That is hypersecretion of growth hormone in adulthood na case. You have your TSH, that is in thyroid. Of course, hyposecretion of this, that would result to decreased activity of the thyroid gland. What will happen? It could even result to abnormality, no? So thyroid hormone, so you have your cretinism, you have your magka-toxic goiter ka, no? So ayan. So that's why there are some individual, no? Ito yung we should watch out for an individual who promotes not to eat iodized salt because we said it is radioactive because iodine guys, iodine that is found in that fortified salt is just enough to stimulate your thyroid hormone to produce this. Basically, it is needed para maiwasan yung hyposecretions ng thyroid hormone. Because usually sa bukid, no, kung kulang sila, no, kulang sila ng salt, kulang yung iodine content na kinakain nila, that will results to mental retardation ng mga bata. It's okay for adult because you'll not be affected. The problem is in your children. Lalo na sa parents, pag kulang yung iodine concentration ng blood mo na binibigay mo, lalo na sa mama, sa babae, that would result to mental retardations, which is nakakalungkot, no? Nakakalungkot lang siya or medyo, well, especially first day, we are fond of promoting this, this idea that these are dangerous, there's are, well, before these substances are released to the market, no? So yung mga fortified salt natin na with iodine, no? Yung iodized salt, it undergoes series of research before siya ni-release sa market. Inallow ng FDA, not only here but also in other countries. But of course, Uh, Not only is the A's, in other evangelical churches also this happens. Maraming conspiracies theorists na, hey, this can result to kwan, ana. Sana, matagal na tayong nagiging ganun. Even vaccinations now are being used by, now we are not condemning them, that is their right, but sana, pag pinush mo na that they will undergo vaccination and they will refuse this, they will demand that it is their right. But if you're the one asserting your right also that you need to be vaccinated, they will accuse you of a lot of things. Now, I will not mention it kung unsa man ang ilang mga accusations sa mga individual nga nag-undergo of vaccinations. So sila mo demand sila sa ilang rights, but pag abot na sa imo ha, you don't have the right. So ay na no. So I hope dili unta na siya gamiton. So anterior pituitary glands, anterior pituitary hormones, okay, are tropic hormones produced and secreted in the anterior pituitary gland to target other endocrine glands. All hormones in the previous list target other endocrine glands. So this is very unique in hormones because they only respond again to the specific cells with specific receptors. Although the hormones are present in the blood, no, that circulates in your body, but yet they will only bind to the organs which they are specifically intended to stimulate. Bisan pa na gapaligo pa na, let's take for example your adrenocorticotropic. Bisan pa gikaliguan na ang testis og adrenocorticotropic, dili na niya ma-stimulate nga naman wala siya kwan receptor para sa adrenocorticotropic. Asa ra man na siya mo react ang adrenocorticotropic didto ra gyud siya sa kidney. So inana. So muna siya ka specific ang endocrine. Then you have your posterior pituitary gland. So posterior pituitary gland is called neurohypophysis because it relies on what? Neurosecretory cells in the hypothalamus. So basically, electrical signals. Yeah, neurosecretory. So, electrical signals lang ang needed niya. On-off switch lang. Okay. So, from the hypothalamus to release oxytocin and your EDH or your antidiuretic hormone. Ang target aning duwa, oxytocin, it targets your sa babae joints and the uterus. While your EDH, it targets the kidney. Antidiuretic man. Smooth muscle, uterus, ito yung mga target organ. EDH targets the kidney to minimize water loss. Antidiuretic means dili ka mag-loss sa water. Kung wala ni siya, magsigkag ihi. But if it is present, so usually, saan ba siya increase? Okay, now on the basic lang, no, physiology. If you have wound, no, pag mayroon kang wound, halimbawa, nagka-cut. So basically, using your hemostasis, your body will respond in clotting, no, clotting the bloods. Not only that, no, not only in clotting, no. First, vasoconstriction of the blood vessel. Then you have your hemostasis nga process. Mao na to siya dayon ang imong magsulod nitong clotting factors, no, mag lactate aggregations, then fibrinogen ng adhesions dito sa imuhang samad, no? But ang endocrine cells or ang endocrine hormones, endocrine glands nimo have other way of controlling your bleeding or controlling your blood loss para hindi masyadong bumaba yung blood volume mo. Paano? Hindi ka niya paiihiin. Control niya yung pag-filter ng blood mo, no? Hindi siya magpapalabas ng maraming water. So, yan. Halimbawa, if you notice, if you are playing games under the heat of the sun, in order to control your loss of water because water is being utilized by your muscles, hindi ka masyadong umiihi. Kahit anong daming inom mo ng tubig, hindi ka nag-feel or nag-urge na mag-urinate. Why? Because you are losing water in other parts of the body, especially sa skin. No? You are perspiring a lot. So ngayon kung mag-lose ka pa ng water through urination, what will happen to your blood volume? It will decrease. Same is true also with that. No? Women with history of blood loss. No? Example, I would like to cite the woman in the story of Jesus who how many years na nagsuffer siya ng blood loss sa history sa Bible story. Ilang years ba 'yon, Valerie? Naalala mo? Yung babaeng nag-touch ng hem ng cloth o ng dress or ng damit ni Jesus. She's suffering from chronic blood loss, di ba? So, that woman is what? Na mayroon siyang mataas na level ng EDH or antidiuretic hormone para maiwasan yung magka-hemorrhagic shock siya. So, hindi siya pinapaihi kasi nagme-menstruate siya for how many, not only days, but it takes years, na ba? 12 years, I think that was 12 years or 40 years. Hindi ko na masyadong memorize yung story na ganyan. But basically, if there are doctors during that coming from our time and she would be examined in all areas, no? Especially sa hormonal level niya. And basically, mataas talaga. But it would take only a matter of faith na mawak lang siya sa only a part, no? Part of the cloth. Part of the cloth. Part of the dress. Dress man na kay murag gown man dyan sa unang sinina sa lalaki pa do babae parehara. Except nga na ay head dress ang babae. Part sa dress lang ni Jesus. Clock, no? Iyang nagunitan, ayon na siya. Pero sa ato, lisod man, at this time, if you are suffering from that, you will be diagnosed of myoma. Di ba? Myoma magina. Basta hinana siya. Myoma. Unsa may solusyon nato karon sa modern times? Surgery. No? Magkakuan ka, no? Mag-removal ka sa myoma mo dito sa uterus. So, luoy kayong taong itong bahay. No? Panahon na. Pero naayo lang siya tungod sa iyong faith. That's why sa ato apon, no? So, dili kinahanglan nga dili kinahanglan. Kinahanglan nato ang faith and science as of today in order for us to have healing. They must work hand in hand. So, inana. Dili lang kayang isa ka aspect. So, this one stimulates the release of your ADH. Now, these are the physiological process how the ADH or is released rather. So these are the abnormality. Example for acromegaly for an increase of growth hormone when you are already in adulthood. So you see the face are imbalanced. Masyado siyang mataas. The face, the jaw, the cheeks. But of course, if you look at the extremity, medyo normal naman siya, but except for the fingers. You have diabetes insipidus. Okay, usually this is caused by increase of insufficient rather hyposecretion of antidiuretic hormone. So dahil diyan magiging mataas yung sugar sa blood mo dahil hindi siya na-discharge. Tinatawag yan na diabetes insipidus. So anyway, it can be corrected, no? Kasi mayroon naman siyang oral na pwede nating i-take to substitute for the ADH na sinisecrete ng pituitary gland. Then you have your thyroid hormone. This is a butterfly-shaped organ found here, just here, no? Here's if you're going to palpate for Adam's apple, about 2 finger below that, on the lateral side, you can palpate there a small mass of tissue. Okay, that is your thyroid gland. So if you have thyroid tumor, you can easily palpate there na lalaki siya ito. Pag may mga, if you are suffering also from decrease no, of thyroxine or no, TSH hormones, ma-feel mo to na lumalaki siya. Yan yung tinatawag nating glitter. Then at the back of that, sa likod pero nasa gilid pa rin, you have your parathyroid hormone. Okay. So it produces now, you have your thyroid follicle cells that produces the thyroid hormone. Dito na yung tinatawag nating T3, T4 and T3. Your tetraiodothyronine and triiodothyronine. So that is for T4 and T3. Then you have your thyroxine. Okay? So siya yung na-produce ng thyroid gland. Okay, these are the functions of T3 and T4. So they utilize the negative feedback. So these are example of hyperthyroidism and also hypothyroidism. So actually class, whether you are hypo or hyperthyroidism, yung ini-experience mo, yung reaction ng thyroid gland is yan pa rin. Magiging malaki siya. But common siya sa hypo. No? Common siya sa hypothyroidism. So, ito, makikita mo to sa usually in mountainous areas or areas where panagsalang sila gagamit og asin. Because iodine class can, or food coming from the sea are rich in iodine. Especially seaweeds, no? Matataas siya ng iodine. So, ayan, nasa bundok ka, if you are in a mountainous area, how can you go to the sea? So, that's why before, salt is used as monetary kuan, no? Ito yung ginagamit nating pera. Okay? Ginagamit siya as monetary unit of salt together with the gold. So, the people from the mountains have gold while the people from the lowlands have salt. So, they come to barter. So, usually 1:1. 1 gram of gold, 1 gram of salt. 1 kilogram of gold, 1 kilogram of salt. So that's usually the value. Until such time na nawala yung salt, gold naiwan. No? So, ayan. Then you have your parathyroid glands. Okay. So, usually, this is a small mass just adjacent to your thyroid. Sa gilid lang siya. Okay. It produces parathormone and calcitonin. Okay. This is for regulation of calcium concentration in your bloodstream. Then you have your dili na ko magtuwal anang regulating nila kasi sa tissue naman. Adrenal glands. So, adrenal glands, it is located at the top of the kidney. Now, some of the names of the adrenal glands is suprarenal, renal glands, adrenal glands. Ad means it is added at the top of the kidney. Suprarenal because it is located at the top of the kidney. Sometimes it's called renal glands because it is attached to the kidney, and the 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 the, the hormones that it produces also targets the kidney. Okay? So that's why daghan siya name, no? Pero never forget the word renal. Suprarenal, adrenal, and renal. Naagpagin na siya. No? Okay? So dira na siya. So naituwa ka part sa anak niya, your adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. So the cortex is divided into 3 zones which produces the steroid hormones, the cholesterol hormones. Okay. Sa man ang mga hormones na gina-produce sa adrenal cortex or adrenocortical hormones, you have your mineralocorticoids. So from the word mineral means it reacts to the minerals in your blood, which is sodium and potassium. Okay, so aldosterone is responsible for that, regulating the sodium-potassium level. So, saan ba siya makikita natin? In which part of the kidney that this sodium-potassium reacts? Usually in your renal tubules, no? Sa renal tubules yung nag-react. Starting from your loop of Henle, descending loop of Henle, convoluted, no? Proximal convoluted tubule. Then you have your descending loop, then loop of Henle, then ascending loop, no? So dira na siya, no? Dira siya nag-react yun ang imuhang sodium and potassium. It regulates the water absorption. Then you have your glucocorticoids, which influence glucose metabolism. Okay, basically, doon siya mismo sa muscles. Okay? Sa kidney rin, so reabsorption ng glucose. Okay, then you have your cortisols. Okay, so these are the hormones. And you have your androgens. Okay, 6 hormones. These are produced by your adrenal cortex. Then, usually, aldosterone, that is very important, no, for the release of renin-angiotensin. Okay, renin-angiotensin is produced by your kidney tissues, especially in your juxtaglomerular cells, or yung cells na nag-filter ng blood natin dun sa nephrons. Okay? Okay. Nag-produce siya ng ginatawag nating renin and angiotensin. Yung renin and angiotensin, actually, class is triggered because of the decrease of oxygen concentration in your blood. Madidetect yan dito sa juxtaglomerular cells. Okay? Madidetect siya. So, pag na-detect siya, will happen. This renin-angiotensin hormone is being released. Saan siya magre-react ngayon? Doon siya magre-react sa lungs. Okay? Sa lungs siya. Pagdating doon when the blood that carries this hormone reaches the lung tissue will activate this renin-angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. The angiotensin 2 is the one stimulates your red bone marrow to produce more RBC, so that this RBC will what? Will carry more oxygen, then it will be delivered into different parts of your body. Okay? So yan yung pinakasimpleng cycle niya. But of course, if you go to the details of this, it is much more complex, no? Okay. Ito, no? Angiotensin 1, then you have your angiotensin 2. Okay, so dito, ang tinarget niya is your adrenal cortex to secrete it, salts para ma-absorb. So, means, ibig sabihin, nag-produce siya inabsorb niya yung sodium para mag-combine siya ng chlorine para ma-absorb yung water. But of course, it has different effect in other organs. Okay, this is more on regulating the blood pressure, but we have also in regulating if we have here oxygen level. Okay, iba naman siya yung pag tinarget niya yung dun sa tinamaan yung bone marrow ninyo, ma-trigger yung tinatawag nating erythropoiesis. No? It's the process of producing RBC in your red bone marrow. Then you have your glucocorticoids. Okay, sa glucose yan. Okay. Ito, result ito ng Cushing syndrome. Pag masyadong mataas yung secretions ng cortisols. Ayan, may butterfly rush siya o may buffalo hump pa rin siya sa likod. Usually, malalaki yung tummy nila, may buffalo hump, tapos medyo may balahibo pa dyan sa likod ng all. Dire sa neck, no? At back of the neck. They call it as truncal, mayroon siyang truncal obesity. Natawag yung Cushing syndrome, or you have high levels of circulating cortisols or hyperglucocorticoids. Hyposecretion ng glucocorticoids, you will have Addison disease. So these are abnormal, no? So then you have your adrenal medulla. Si adrenal medulla, nagsisecrete siya ng epinephrine and norepinephrine. So saan siya ginagamit? So usually, the adrenal medulla responds siya sa ANS. So, usually in fight or flight. Diba? In emergency situation. So, it responds to stress. Then you have your pancreas, ito, or islet of Langerhans. So, both it is an endocrine and exocrine. So, ito yung sinabi ko kanina, if endocrine function siya, islet of Langerhans. If it is an exocrine, then that is pancreas, yung name. Okay? So, sa endocrine, yung pinoproduce na hormone sa endocrine functions is your glucagon and insulin. And somatostatin, no? Yan yung regulating hormones between the endocrine and between the insulin and glucagon. But if it is an exocrine, then it produces pancreatic juice, which is basically responsible for carbohydrates absorption or synthesis of carbohydrates. So, yan yung functions niya. So, mayroon siyang acynar cells, okay, na doon siya nagre-react sa absorption ng sugar. Okay, then you have your islet of Langerhans, which is para doon siya sa endocrine. So, in pancreatic hormones or in islet of your Langerhans, mayroon siyang tatlong cells na makikita, your alpha and beta, no, and delta. And you have these F cells. But usually, let's focus our attention to these. Alpha, beta, and delta. So the alpha cells produces glucagon, beta cells, insulin. Yung delta, yan yung somatostatin. So, yung pancreatic hormones mo or yung how does the pancreas regulates your blood sugar, may tinatawag siyang auto-regulations. So automatically, if your body detects that there is an increase of glucose level, automatically your pancreas or your islet of Langerhans will secrete your insulin hormone. So, meron siyang autocrine na tinatawag or no, not autocrine, auto-regulations. If na-attain na yung hormone normal level, let's take for example, napababa na yung glucose level mo sa normal na level, what will happen? The insulin will be, no, the release of insulin of your beta cells will be inhibited by what? By the somatostatin. Your delta cells will be stimulated automatically and will release your somatostatin that will inhibit the activity of the beta cells. Halimbawa, masyado siyang mababa. So what your pancreas do will secrete glucagon through its alpha cells. Now, when the glucose level reaches high enough to normal value, automatically your delta cells again will secrete somatostatin hormone that will inhibit the activity of your alpha cells. So that is autoregulations. The pancreas itself regulates its function. It doesn't rely with other cells or other endocrine glands. So, tinatawag siyang regulations. Then you have your gonadal. So gonads refers to ovary and your testes for women, for men. No? Diyan, no? So sa babae, yung gonads niya is makikita siya on the left and right. So basically, yung gonadal hormones na sinisecretes ng ovaries is the estrogen or estradiol and progesterone together with relaxin and inhibin. So yan. So but basically, let's focus our attention with this estrogen and progesterone. Okay, so these are steroid hormone. So ano ba yung functions nila? So sa babae, lalo na pag hindi pa siya o pag kakapatong pa lang niya sa puberty, well, estrogen and progesterone that will stimulate the secondary sex characteristic for women, which is a little bit earlier compared to men. So usually at the age of 10 or 9, women already starts to develop their secondary sex characteristic. Lumalaki na yung boobs. Nung dati, na flat screen pa, oy, nagiging medyo malaki na, no? Ano pa? Wala na. Yung skin nila nagiging oily na. So, they need more skincare products now. Even yung amoy sa kilikili, nag-iiba na rin. Because, again, they respond now to different, if they are subject to stress, they respond now differently. So, sa lalaki, usually, it starts at 11 and 12, no? A little bit later. So, when menstruation starts, there, ayun, usually, mayroon na ba yung mga secondary sex characteristics ng babae? You know, hair grows in specific areas, no? In the groin, in the armpit. But of course, it is not as thick as men. Lalo na sa kilikili, yung lalaki medyo mas makapal yung balahibo dyan, no? So, again, parang tong may time bound yung pag-release ng hormone ng pituitary gland para ma-stimulate yung ganitong mga hormones, no? Yung gonads. at saka yung gonads ng babae at ng lalaki to secretes these hormones, no? Sa lalaki, you have your testes to produce testosterone. So testosterone, again, that is also triggers the secondary sex characteristic for men. Mababago na yung boses. Yung boses ng una, napapareho lang sa boses ng babae. Ngayon, magiging magkaiba na. Yung babae, it will become high pitch. Yung voice becomes what? Low pitch, no? Medyo mababa. But of course, may mga lalaki na medyo mataas yung pitch. That's why we have tenor, di ba? Mataas yung pitch na yan sa lalaki. That is equivalent to the first soprano, no, sa babae. You have first tenor, then bass. Medyo mababang boses ng pitch ng lalaki. Sa babae, you have your alto. No? Yan. I don't know if mayroong middle na voice yung babae. But sa lalaki, you have your baritone, which is between the tenor and the in the bass, no? Kaya pag pinasulo mo yung kanta yung bariton, para sabi mo wala naman sa tono, you do not know where you're going to put it, if it is on the melody or in the tenor or in the bass ba siya, no? Yabag. Pero actually, it's not, no? It's different from yabag talaga. So, ayan, no? So, those are the hormones. Then you have your pineal gland. I think we have already discussed this, which is found in it is a very small endocrine gland, which is found at the roof of the third ventricle, which is part of the epithalamus that produce melatonin hormone. So this is for your biological clock, okay, that plays a very important role in sleep and wake cycle. Okay, I discussed that already. Then you have your thymus. Now, thymus glands, T cells, no, at a young age class, thymus gland is not yet that active. Hindi pa siya active. But, again, nagpo-produce na siya ng mga T cells. If you notice, class, yung mga bata at the age of 1 or even at birth, going to the age of 6, they are frequently sick. Palagi silang nakakasakit. Sipon, ubo, na? Or fever. Why? Because their immune system is not yet fully developed. Should they rely more on external help? When you say external help, nagre-rely sila sa galing sa labas ng tulong. So that's why you administered paracetamol, you administered what? Cough syrup, you administered antihistamine for running nose to counteract the activity of your histamine substance that is secreted secondary to maybe allergic reactions. Now, bakit pagdating nila ng 6 years old, you will notice that they seldom now go to the doctor. Why? Because at this age, your specific immunity now, your specific immune response becomes active. Kasi yung T cells mo, na-release na siya ng thymus. And your thymus gland now starts to shrink. Your thymus gland is located posterior at your sternum. Sa likod. Okay? Now, at the age of 6, yung thymus gland will slowly shrink. Why? It produces now a lot of T cells. T cells, T memory, T killer, ano pa ba? Na pinaproduce siya, which is respond to specific immunity. Of course, yung counterpart niya, nagpo-produce is the bones, no? You have your B lymphocytes. Ito, T lymphocytes. So, at the age of 6, going up, hindi na siya masyadong na-admit. Why? Because you have now your specific immunity there, the T cells, that is already developed. So, hindi na masyadong nagkasakit yung mga bata at the age of that. Nasa bloodstream siya. No? So, at that age, ang parents makapag-rest na ng gasto. No? Gastos tambal. Okay, so we have here alarm reactions. So, these are physiological process. So, no need to discuss for that. No? So, this is how um, your endocrine system form a if your endocrine system failed to respond to this stimulus that stimulate the endocrine glands to produce the hormone necessary to counteract this uh, the reaction that is created, no, by stimulating your body. So pag nag-fail siya, ang mangyayari, you will have now general adaptation syndrome. So, yan. So, sometimes, usually sa birth, no, nakapanganak na yung mama, pero at the same time, she suffered from blood loss. No? Kasi, overproduction of your oxytocin. So, push talaga ng push. So, what will happen along the way, because of this, the mother suffered from eclampsia or tumaas yung blood pressure, nagka-stroke while giving birth. Because pain would trigger increase in blood pressure. So, yan, matataas yung BP. So, ngayon, kung hindi siya i-control, what will happen? Ma-stroke yung parents or yung mama. That's why we have what we call painless labor, which is designed for parents who have hypertension during their pregnancy or those who are suffering from gestational diabetes. Kasi pag gestational diabetes, ibig sabihin, they have blood sugar concentration in their blood. So what happened? They have their blood pressure increases. So, mataas yung blood pressure nila. So, kasi yung dugo nila naging masyadong sticky. I mean, their hematocrit level is very high. So, high density, mataas yung density ng dugo. No? Ibig sabihin, masyado siyang sticky. So, kasi siya nagka-high blood pressure. Kasi yung sugar, yun yung nagpa-sticky ng blood. Plus, again, dahil taas yung blood sugar level niya, problema din siya ngayon sa healing, no? Kasi mataas yung blood sugar. So, dahil dyan, para maiwasan yung complications during birth, so, pag nanganak yan, yung usual process niya pag nanganak is mag-cesarean. Or kung hindi cesarean, magiging painless yung labor niya. No? It's either mag-epidural siya or mag-general anesthesia siya. Para maiwasan yung complications secondary to labor. Kasi pag nag-labor, masyadong masakit, masyadong stressful, so that might endanger the life of the mother.